Something alarming is happening in the Seattle housing market right now because we are seeing a massive spike in failed transactions across the King County metro area. It is the highest rate of contract failures that we have seen since the start of the pandemic. But why is this happening right now, especially when interest rates have supposedly stabilized? Well, the answer isn't about money, it's about psychology. I am Leah Courage, and today I am going to show you exactly why buyers are pulling out of deals at record rates, and more importantly, how you can bulletproof your transaction so that you actually get to the closing table. This is the ultimate guide that you need for the strangest market shift that we have seen, frankly, in years. And at the end of this video, I am going to share our bulletproof transaction survival guide, which includes the specific checklists that we actually give our sellers to help them pass home inspections with flying colors. So let's dive in. So let's start today with a scenario that is playing out in living rooms all across King County right now. It is what I call the Friday phone call. So imagine that you're a seller. You listed your home in Finney Ridge. You spent weeks decluttering and you painted and you staged it right and you got multiple offers when you actually listed it, and you picked the best offer with the best terms. They had a strong down payment and they were pre-approved with a super reputable local lender, and they wrote a really nice letter to your family, and you felt totally relieved, and mentally you moved on. You started packing boxes. Then halfway through the inspection period, usually on a Friday afternoon, when real estate news always seems to land, your agent calls you and the tone of their voice tells you everything. The buyers are walking, your agent says. Walking? Why? Did the roof cave in? Is the foundation crumbling? The agent says, no. They found some, old wiring in the attic, and the sewer line has a small little belly in it. They don't want to negotiate. They just want out of the transaction. And you are absolutely stunned. 3 years ago, buyers were waiving inspections left and right. They were fighting each other to literally buy houses with holes in the roof. Now, in 2026, a buyer is walking away from a perfectly good home because of what feels like a minor maintenance issue. If this sounds familiar, or if you're worried that it might happen to you, you are not alone. You are witnessing a fundamental shift in buyer behavior that the headlines haven't quite caught up with yet locally. So we need to look at the data. Nationally, we are seeing roughly 16% of deals, that is 1 in every 6 contracts, falling through before closing. In certain price points here in Seattle, specifically say $1 million to $1.5 million, in that range, that number actually feels even higher. The market here has moved from a place of desperation to a place of deliberation. And that transition honestly feels really messy. It creates friction. It creates failed deals. And if you aren't prepared for it, it can and will cost you thousands of dollars and months of wasted time. Before we get into the specific psychology behind the shift, I want to be very clear about something. Navigating a market that is changing rapidly requires a lot more than just luck now. It requires a serious strategy. So if you're thinking about selling your home in Seattle and you want to make sure that your deal actually closes, we would love to help you. My team and I specialize in bulletproofing transactions before they have even hit the market. So whether you're selling in 2 weeks or 2 years, go ahead and please send us a text or give us a phone call or an email. All of our information is in the description below. Let's set you up on a strategy call and get you started on the right path. So, why is this happening? Why have buyers suddenly become so skittish? Well, to understand that, we have to talk about the option economy. To understand the buyer of 2026, you have to remember the buyer of 2021 and 2022. In 2021, we lived in a scarcity economy. There were what felt like 0 homes for sale. If a house hit the market on a Thursday, it didn't just have interest. The statistics actually show that nearly 75% of all offers in the Seattle metro area in that time faced a bidding war. Buyers were operating pretty much from a place of survival instinct. If they saw a house that they liked, they knew that they had one shot. If they hesitated, they lost. If they asked for a repair, they lost. If they didn't offer $50,000 over the asking price, they lost out on the deal. And in fact, in 2021 alone, over 4,000 homes in our region sold for at least $100,000 over the list price. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. So that kind of a crazy environment not only forced buyers to completely ignore red flags with homes, but they actually bought homes with bad roofs, and they bought homes on super busy streets, or they bought homes that didn't really fit their needs simply because they needed a home. And fast forward to today, in February of 2026, we are now in the option economy. Inventory in King County has risen significantly because active listings are up nearly 35% year over year compared to the scarcity that we saw just a couple months ago, what seems like. We aren't flooded with new homes in the same way that we were in 2008, but we have far more active listings than we have seen simply in years. So for the first time in a long time, buyers have choices. A qualified buyer today might log on to Redfin and see 3 or 4 different homes in their price range that they actually like. And this sounds like a good thing, right? Well, buyers have options, but psychologically, this creates a phenomenon that is known as choice paralysis, or the paradox of choice. So when a buyer knows that there are other options, their tolerance for problems kind of drops to zero. If they get under contract on your home and the inspection reveals cracked tile in the bathroom, or a furnace that's 15 years old, or a deck that needs restaining and it's going to be thousands of dollars, they don't see it as a project that they can take on over time. They look at it as a defect. They think, why should I pay this high mortgage rate for a house that has a lot of problems? I can just go look at the other house on 65th Street. Maybe that one's perfect. And the desperation for buyers is gone without a trace. And without desperation, buyers are looking for reasons to say no. They're looking for an exit strategy. And in Seattle specifically, our housing stock gives them plenty of reasons to exit. So speaking of Seattle, let's get hyper-local for a minute. Seattle has some very specific deal killers that you don't find in Phoenix or Dallas or Miami. Our housing stock is old. We have beautiful 1920 Craftsman homes and 1900s Tudors and 1950s mid-century moderns. We love them for their character, but character is just a nice word for old systems. And the number one deal killer that I am seeing right now is the sewer scope. If you're new to Seattle real estate, then you might not even know what that is. A sewer scope is when an inspector runs a camera down the pipe that connects your house to the main city sewer line in the street. In many parts of the country, this is a non-issue, but in Seattle, where many of these lines were installed 80 or 100 years ago, they are made of concrete or clay. Over time, the ground shifts, and trees, those beautiful giant Douglas firs that we love so much, send their big roots looking for water, and they find the tiniest crack in your clay pipe, and they burrow in it, and they create a blockage. Another thing that can also happen is the heavy concrete pipe settles, creating a belly and a dip in the line where water collects. That's also not good. So if this happens for a buyer in their inspection in 2026, here's what happens in a transaction. The buyer loves the house. They make an offer. They do the inspection. The general home inspector says that the house looks great. The buyer's happy. But then the sewer scope guy shows up and he runs his camera, and on the screen, he shows the buyer a ball of roots or a crack in the pipe that's right at the edge of the property line. And he tells the buyer that this line is failing, which is a big, scary word, and that the line needs to be replaced. And that will cost a minimum of $15,000. In 2021, a buyer would have said, okay, I'll deal with it later, just give me the house. But in 2026, the buyer panics. They see their down payment, they see their closing costs, and now they see $15,000 that they have to pay the week that they move in. They immediately ask the seller to fix it. And if the seller says no, or even hesitates, or maybe offers to meet them halfway, the buyer walks away. So now we also need to talk about a specific sector of the market that is seeing the highest cancellation rates, which are condos and townhomes. So in Seattle, we have thousands and thousands of HOA governed properties. The deal killers here aren't usually physical though. They are in the paperwork. So the resale certificate is a stack of documents that is hundreds of pages thick that details the financial health of the HOA. In 2021, buyers just skimmed it. But today they are poring over every line. If they see that the reserve study, for example, is only 30% funded, or that there's a mention of, say, a special assessment for siding in 3 years that's going to cost them thousands of dollars, they're gone. So sellers, you need to order these documents before you list your property. You need to know if your HOA is insolvent far before a buyer tells you so that you can get ahead of any issues. But it's not just sewers and HOAs, it's the accumulated weight of small issues. In the option economy, buyers are keeping score. The roof is 5 years of life left, strike one. The electrical panel is an older brand? Well, strike 2. There's some evidence of rodents in the crawl space? Well, that's strike 3. You're out. Any of these issues by itself is completely solvable, but when you combine them with the financial pressures that buyers are already feeling, they usually just become too much. And this brings us to the financial reality of the market. We talk a lot about interest rates, and yes, rates have stabilized in the low 6s. They aren't 7 or 8% anymore, thank goodness. But let's be real, 6% is still very expensive compared to what people were used to for a decade. Home prices in Seattle have not crashed. They have leveled out, but they're still high. So that means that for the average buyer, the monthly payment is a huge stretch. Maybe they're qualifying, but oftentimes they find themselves at the very top of their budget. So this creates a state of super heightened financial anxiety. So when a buyer goes under contract, they wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about the mortgage payment. No kidding. They're looking for validation that they are making a smart decision. When the inspection report comes back with red ink, meaning safety issues, deferred maintenance, or unknown costs, it validates the buyer's fear. It confirms that little voice in their head that says, "This is a mistake. You can't afford this. The house is a money pit." And that fear, let me tell you, is really, really powerful. It overrides their desire for a home. And because the contract allows them to walk away on the inspection contingency and get their earnest money back, they pull the ripcord. There's also a psychological timeline that you need to be aware of, and we call this the remorse window. It usually opens about 72 hours after mutual acceptance. The adrenaline of winning the bidding war usually wears off, and the reality of the mortgage payment starts to set in with the buyer. This is the danger zone in a home sale transaction timeline. We also have to discuss the silent partner in every single transaction, by the way, which is the appraiser. In the option economy, appraisers have become a lot more conservative. They're looking at the same data that the buyers are. So if you accepted an offer that is $50,000 over its list price, do not assume that it will appraise for that value. If the appraisal comes in low, a buyer who's already nervous will, trust me, use that as an immediate exit ramp. They won't even try to bridge the gap. They will just say, "The bank says it's not worth it, so I'm out." So often it's not about the specific repair. It's about the cost of cold feet. The repair is just the excuse that a buyer uses to get out of a payment that scares them. So if you're a seller watching this, you might be thinking, well, dang, this sounds hopeless. Should I just not sell? No. Not at all. You can absolutely sell in this market. In fact, homes are selling every single day, but you have to be aware that the strategy for selling has completely changed. You cannot use the 2021 playbook in 2026. If you want to sell your home in Seattle in 2026 without the deal falling apart, you have to embrace this new philosophy. And the philosophy is disclose to close. The days of listing a home and just hoping for the best are simply over. You cannot list a home in 2026 without, for example, a pre-inspection. But what is a pre-inspection? Well, a pre-inspection means that as a seller, you go ahead and you hire a qualified inspector before you put the sign in the yard. You inspect the roof and the crawl space and the attic and the electrical. And yes, if you're on an older sewer system, you even scope the sewer. You find out exactly what is wrong with your house before ever listing it. And trust me, there is something wrong with every single house, even if it's brand new construction. So once you have that report, you have 3 choices. First, fix it. If it's a safety issue or if it looks like it's a deal killer like a broken sewer line, you're going to need to fix it anyway. Remove the objection before the buyer ever even sees the problem. Second, price it. If the roof is old but it's not leaking, you don't necessarily have to replace it, but you should price the home acknowledging that the buyer will need to replace it soon. And third, disclose it. This is the most important part of the whole equation. It means that you provide the inspection report to potential buyers before they even make an offer. Why would you do this? Why would you literally hand a buyer a list of things that are wrong with your house? Because it removes the surprise factor. And we know from recent industry data that over 70% of all canceled transactions are triggered by new issues that were discovered during the inspection phase. When a buyer reads the report before making an offer, they process the information a lot more calmly. They calculate the costs. They talk to their uncle who's a contractor. And then when they write the offer, they've already accepted the condition of the home. That means that they can't come back 3 weeks later and say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that the furnace was old. Yes, you did. It was in the report. And we, being the sellers, priced the home based on that report. You offered based on that report. And this creates a stickier deal, which means that the buyer has already mentally hurdled through the obstacles and that they likely aren't going to get cold feet over the same information because they already knew it. Transparency in this case is your armor. If you try to hide issues, the buyer will find them during the inspection. And when they find them on their own, they feel deceived. They wonder, what else were you hiding? The trust starts to break and the deal dies. But if you disclose it up front, you're being trustworthy, you're being honest, and the buyer feels a lot safer moving forward. Finally, we are seeing the return of the contingent buyer. So this is someone who has to sell their current home in order to buy yours. So in 2021, these offers went straight into the trash, unfortunately. Less than 2% of accepted offers in King County during that time carried a contingency. But in 2026, that number has jumped to nearly 15% because the buyer pool is thinner and sellers need to be more flexible. But this creates a domino effect. If your buyer's buyer pulls out because, for example, of a sewer scope on their house, your deal will collapse too. It is a chain of fragility. If you accept a contingent offer, you have to vet the buyer's home as if it were your home. You need to see the listing for their house. You need to know if their sewer is bad because their problem is officially your problem. Now let me pivot to the buyers. If you're buying a home in 2026, I want you to listen to me very closely. You have leverage right now. Real leverage, because for the first time in years, you can actually do your due diligence. You can inspect the property. You can review the title report. You can ask the seller for concessions on things. But, and this is a big but, you have to know how to use that leverage correctly. I see too many buyers squandering this opportunity because they're looking for the perfect house. Let me tell you a secret. The perfect house does not exist. If you walk away from a solid house in a great neighborhood because the inspection report scared you a little bit, you might be making a massive financial mistake. Here's the difference between a deal killer and a little project. A deal killer is structural failure. Say the foundation's sinking, the house is sliding down a hill, there's active mold all throughout the walls. These are very big things, and these are reasons to walk away. A project is everything else. Old wiring, that can be updated. An old sewer line, that can be changed. Old roof, that could be replaced. If the house has good bones, meaning that the layout is right, the location is right, and the structure is sound, do not walk away right now just because there are some projects. Instead, use your leverage. This is where your agent earns their commission. In Washington, we use a form called the 35R to respond to inspections. So instead of walking away, go back to the seller and say, we love the house, but the sewer line needs work. We have a bid for $15,000 and we're asking for a $15,000 credit at closing. And here's a little tactical piece of advice, by the way, that completely saves deals. When you ask for something after an inspection, always ask for a financial credit instead of asking the seller to do repairs. Why? Because seller repairs introduce a new layer of uncertainty and they're less likely, honestly, to say yes to them. If you ask the seller, for example, to fix the plumbing, they are going to hire the cheapest plumber that they can get their hands on. If you don't like the quality of the work or say the contractor is delayed, you can end up fighting about it with the seller a day before closing. And let me tell you, you do not want that scenario. A credit, on the other hand, is nice and clean. It transfers the risk and the choice to you. It closes the door on negotiation immediately. Sellers know that even if they try to be helpful by fixing things, they often end up losing the buyer anyway. So as a buyer, take the money, hire your own contractor, and that means you control the quality. And in this market, many sellers will say yes to a credit, or they will meet you in the middle. Why? Because sellers know that if you walk away, that they have to put the house right back up on the market. And a house that comes back on the market carries a stigma. In fact, statistics indicate that homes that are relisted after a transaction fails end up selling for an average of 6% less than the initial offer price. Yikes. Other buyers, once it's back on the market, will wonder, what's wrong with it? Why did the first buyer bail? And the sellers know this, and therefore they are motivated to keep you in the deal because simply it helps them save on money too. You want to use that motivation of theirs. The headlines love to use the words like crash or crisis, but what we're seeing in Seattle in 2026 isn't a crash. It's a return to standards. For too long, the market was abnormal. It wasn't normal to buy a house in 15 minutes without an inspection. It wasn't normal to waive every single protection that a buyer had just so that they could get a key. We now are returning to a balanced market where buyers have rights and sellers have responsibilities. And that transition is a little bumpy. It causes friction and causes deals to fail. But if you understand the new rules of the same game, you can win. So like I promised earlier, here is our bulletproof transaction survival guide. If you are a seller, pre-inspect, disclose everything, and price for reality. Don't price for a fantasy. If you're a buyer, distinguish between fear and facts. Use your inspection to negotiate, not just to escape. The turbulence that we're seeing is manageable, but only if you go in with your eyes wide open. So if you're thinking about making a move this year, don't do it alone. You need a strategy that accounts for this new kind of psychology that we have to use in today's market. I have put together a transaction survival guide for 2026. It includes a checklist for sellers on exactly what to pre-inspect and a red flag versus green light guide for buyers to help you read inspection reports without panicking. You can get that from us completely for free by emailing us. Our contact information is in the description below. I am Leah Courage, and thank you so much for watching our video, and make sure to give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. And if you are interested in having a totally custom curated buying or selling experience this year in Washington State, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you and discuss your situation. Now, don't let that fear of the Friday phone call stop you from building your future. It's just important to be prepared. So thank you again for watching. Keep exploring, and I will see you in the next video.